Warm-up act for the Premier of Ontario. Premier Ford, thank you for joining us here in Ottawa. It's fantastic to see you again and your team. You know, we are all united, certainly the Premier and I, we're united in our shared mission to build. And for example, during Premier Ford's time as chair of the Council of the Federation, he and I work closely together to reduce interprovincial trade barriers and to create the conditions to get Canada and Ontario building again. And today what we're doing is transforming how we can build Ontario strong.
Nous voulons avant tout réaliser de grands projets d'infrastructure qui vont permettre de renforcer nos industries au pays, de diversifier nos partenariats commerciaux et de créer des milliers de nouvelles carrières pour les gens de l'Ontario. For too long, the construction of major infrastructure has been stalled by arduous, inefficient approval processes. Uncertainty, red tape, duplicative and complicated reviews have curbed investment. Many examples of this. One study shows that regulatory requirements in Canada have increased by 40%, 40%, over the course of the past 2 decades, suppressing business investment growth by nearly 10%. We need to turn that around. We need to turn that around to create high-paying jobs today and better futures for our kids tomorrow. Le Canada a toujours été une nation fière des bâtisseurs. Nous avions l'habitude de construire des grandes choses dans ce pays et nous les construisions rapidement. Il est temps de s'y remettre et d'aller de l'avant. Et pour cela, nous devons d'abord nous débarrasser de ce qui nous freine. So today, Canada and Ontario are signing a cooperation agreement on environmental and impact assessment. This agreement will speed up project approval timelines by introducing a new one project, one review approach. And under the agreement, Canada and Ontario will have a streamlined and flexible assessment process that will make approvals more efficient, delivering major projects faster while maintaining both federal and provincial standards. By working together, we will work with the same information. We will have the same timelines, and we will respect each other's jurisdictions. So for example, if a project is primarily regulated by Ontario, the federal government will rely on the provincial environmental assessment. Of course, if a project falls under federal jurisdiction, the federal process will take precedence. And when, as is the case often, there are shared responsibilities, we'll pool resources, we'll align timelines, including through a harmonized process. In all cases, Ontario and the federal governments will maintain their standards and take their responsibilities for final approval decisions. So by aligning our approaches, we reduce duplication in the assessment phase and get projects built faster. By working together, we'll be providing greater certainty to builders so we can turbocharge the construction of the infrastructure Ontario and Canada needs to build our economy strong. C'est le troisième accord sur les évaluations d'impact que le Canada conclut avec une province après ceux établis avec la Colombie-Britannique et le Nouveau-Brunswick. Nous travaillons avec d'autres provinces, y compris l'île de Prince-Édouard et le Manitoba, dans le même but. Et notre objectif est de conclure des attentes dans chaque province. Canada's new government is building our economy. And it's not just what we build, it's also how we build. We're building in solidarity with workers, creating good union jobs from the skilled trades to the STEM. We're building sustainably, reducing emissions while boosting competitiveness and affordability. We're building inclusively, in full partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. For example, under this agreement, the federal government reaffirms its commitment to uphold UNDRIP, and we're putting this into action by providing further funding for Indigenous peoples to participate in the associated assessment processes. We're also building Canadian.
with Canadian workers, Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, Canadian lumber. Mardi, notre nouvelle politique achetée canadienne est entrée en vigueur. Le gouvernement privilégiera l'utilisation de l'acier, de l'aluminium et de bois d'œuvre canadiens dans les grands projets fédéraux de construction et de défense. Le gouvernement va aussi privilégier les entreprises canadiennes qui ont une vraie présence au Canada, les entreprises qui investissent ici, qui emploient des Canadiens et des Canadiens et qui contribuent à l'économie locale. We are building in partnership with provinces and territories. We've referred multiple projects across Canada to the new Major Projects Office, including, importantly, the Darlington new nuclear project in Bowmanville, Ontario, a project that will drive $500 million annually into the province's nuclear supply chain and will position Ontario and Canada as global leaders in the deployment of small modular reactors. 18,000 workers will be involved in the construction of Bowmanville, Darlington. Once built, the new reactor will power 300,000 homes with clean energy and sustain 4,000 jobs. The Major Projects Office will also accelerate Canada's production and processing of critical minerals. And crucially, in Ontario, the Ring of Fire has the critical minerals needed, amongst others EVs, solar, wind, as well as defense applications. To conclude, in a rapidly shifting global economy, we can't control what other nations do, but we can control what we choose to do. And we are choosing to build Ontario strong and to build Canada strong. Thank you very much, merci, and I now give you the Premier of Ontario.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Get out of the way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. And I just want to start by thanking Prime Minister Carney for hosting me here today in beautiful Ottawa. And yes, I'm going to visit the mayor right after this. It's great to be back here again alongside Minister McCarthy and Minister Betham. I'll be somewhere around there. We're talking fine. There you are, Minister. As we continue to stare down President Trump's tariffs and ongoing economic uncertainty, I'm just so pleased to be here today with Prime Minister Carney to celebrate a true milestone on our mission to unleash our economy, create jobs, and build nation-building projects. When Prime Minister Carney took office, he promised to do things differently. He promised to work with provinces and territories to eliminate federal duplication so we can get shovels in the ground sooner, to create jobs and opportunities for workers in every part of this country. Today, Prime Minister Carney has kept his promise. And Prime Minister, I want to thank you on behalf of the people of Ontario and on behalf of the people of Canada. Today's announcement is transformational. Projects that required overlapping provincial and federal review will now have a one project, one process, and this last one is so important. A one decision framework bringing certainty to investors and project proponents. It's time for Canada to build big things again, and nowhere will the impact of this deal will be felt more immediately than in the development of the Ring of Fire. Our agreement is the next step in our government's extensive work and partnerships with First Nations and Northern communities to unlock Ontario's vast critical mineral reserve in the Ring of Fire, which will add $22 billion to our economy and create 70,000 new good-paying jobs. Before today, we've signed historic agreements with Airland First Nation, Marten First Nation, Webequie First Nation, who are ready to build. Today's agreement is the last step in our plan to get shovels in the ground this June. As soon as the ground thaws, 3 whole years ahead of schedule. And the impact of today's agreement will be felt far beyond the Ring of Fire, speeding up approvals for roads, highways, bridges, and minds in every region of Ontario. It's a time when President Trump is taking direct aim at our economy. Every second counts. We need to move at speeds we've never seen before to build a more competitive, more resilient, and self-reliant economy. Together, we're creating new opportunities for Canadian workers in every part of the country. As Premier, I've had the privilege to sign agreements, cut red tape, and tear down the barriers to trade with nearly every Canadian province and territory, unlocking $200 billion in growth. And I'm proud to be standing beside Prime Minister Carney today for our biggest accomplishment to date. Friends, we're always stronger when we work together, and together we're going to build great things and keep the true north strong and free. Thank you, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now begin the questions. On va maintenant passer à la période de questions. First question, Olivia.
Prime Minister Mark Carney, what do you think of the series of conditions that the U.S. trade rep says Canada has to meet in order to extend CUSMA, including bolstering market access to U.S. dairy and addressing the provincial bans on U.S. alcohol? Does this make you feel more encouraged or discouraged about reaching an agreement with U.S. President Donald Trump? And Premier Ford, if you could weigh in afterwards, please.
Well, I'll put this in the context. These are a subset of issues of a much bigger discussion. We've been clear about our approach to supply management. We continue to stand by that. We'll continue to protect supply management. And we continue to see tremendous benefits, first and foremost for Canada, but very much for the United States, of pooling resources where possible in the auto sector, in the steel sector, in the aluminum sector, in the lumber, for forest products. And we will enter those discussions on the review of CUSMA in that spirit. The President and I had a long conversation with President Sheinbaum about this a little under 2 weeks ago, which set out the broad parameters for the review of CUSMA. We'll work closely together with the Government of Ontario, other provinces that are affected by potential adjustments there. And we will always pursue an agreement that is in the interest of Canadian workers, Canadian families, and we'll only sign an agreement that's consistent with that. And I'll give the Premier an opportunity to speak. En français, c'est une les cotations de M. Greer sont quelques exemples des enjeux dans les négociations. Et le gouvernement du Canada et moi-même, nous sommes constants. On va protéger la gestion de l'offre, par exemple. On va continuer d'avoir des discussions, de trouver des occasions pour notre secteur de l'aluminium, de l'acier, de l'automobile, de bois d'œuvre et d'autres secteurs, du secteur aérospatial. Il y aura des discussions complexes pendant la prochaine année. Et le président Trump, moi et Mme Sheinbaum, la présidente du Mexique, nous avons eu une longue discussion sur quelques aspects de processus de revue de l'ACM. Et je laisse la parole à M. Ford.
Thank you. Well, regarding trade, obviously, I have full confidence in the Prime Minister and his negotiating with President Trump. As for alcohol, we've seen wine sales go up 76%. They're having a record year. The grape growers are having a record year. Small, large wineries are having a record year. Distilleries are. And when the Prime Minister and President Trump come up with a great deal for both countries, we'd be more than happy to bring in some maybe Kentucky bourbon. But until then, we're going to hold off.
Follow-up? Prime Minister Carney, what is on our list to strengthen CUSMA? Do we have any conditions besides lifting sectoral tariffs?
Well, we have, I would say several things. One, we see value in truly pursuing integration in our auto sector, building the next generation in the auto sector. We see value in the aerospace sector. We see value to both countries. I'll give you a concrete example with respect to aluminum, which is that in effect, Canadian exports of aluminum to the United States saves the United States the equivalent of 10 Hoover dams of electricity. This is just sensible for both countries. But in order for, and there are many other examples of where working together makes the two economies, the three economies in the case of CUSMA, stronger. But in order for the United States to have those advantages, we need secure market access, and we need stable market access, a return to a degree of certainty. So we need a structure that aligns the incentives across both sides of the border, particularly on the American side, that will provide consistency of that market access. There are many, many opportunities to grow our economies together, and I haven't touched yet on emerging strategic sectors, critical minerals. We're talking about the Ring of Fire today. That is an opportunity, first and foremost, for the people of Ontario, including Indigenous peoples resident in Ontario. It's an opportunity for Canada. It's a potential opportunity for the United States, but it's not an assured opportunity for the United States. It's part of a bigger discussion in terms of our trading relationship, because we have other partners around the world, in Europe, for example, who are very interested in participating in those value chains. So there's a broad set of things that work for Canada, but if I were to boil it down to one element, which is, as we define the new trading relationship, to have an alignment of incentives so that that certainty is reestablished for Canadian businesses, Canadian households. And that may be a different set of activities than we had before.
Next question, Mike.
Prime Minister Mike Couture with CTV News. I wanted to ask you something, just to be clear, based on the number of interviews you've done recently. Is it your view that if Premier Ford had not launched that ad in the United States, that sectoral tariffs would be lower right now?
It was the case that we were close to an agreement. We didn't get that agreement. The terms of that agreement, from our perspective, are still on the table. The U.S. has not picked up that part of the negotiation. An agreement that would benefit, first and foremost, Canadian workers in steel, aluminum, in energy, some other sectors, but would also benefit the United States tremendously. My judgment is that is now going to roll into the broader CUSMA negotiation. So we're unlikely, given the time horizons coming together, to have a sectoral agreement. Although, if the United States wants to come back on that in those areas, we're always ready there. We're very ready. And I'll make one other point, head back. We are very ready on forest products to strike an agreement. And the United States has affordability challenges, including in the housing sector, in the forest product sector, and we can make an immediate difference to affordability in the United States, to the benefit, yes, of Canadian workers, but also to American consumers. C'était le cas que nous étions près d'un accord avec les Américains en ce qui concerne l'acier et l'aluminium, puis l'énergie, quelques d'autres aspects. Et ce deal-là reste sur la table, demeure sur la table par la perspective de mon gouvernement. Mais la situation actuelle, c'est plus probable que les États-Unis, pas les États-Unis, mais toutes les négociations soient dans le processus de revue de l'ACM.
I think Premier Ford wants to speak first.
Well, number one, that was the best ad that's ever been run, 12.4 billion views. We wanted to bring it to the attention of the American people. And be very frank, it was President Trump. If he didn't comment on it, rather than 12.4 billion views, it might be 12.4 people viewing it. But in saying that, our intention was to bring it to the attention of the American people through the greatest president that ever lived, that was Ronald Reagan. Protectionism does not work. We're their number one customer. They're our number one customer. We need to work together. We need to put that AmCan fortress together, and we're going to be stronger. It's as simple as that. President Trump came out the first day and said, if I was Canada, I'd run the ad too. and a little bird whispered in his ear, and the next day things changed. You know something? I'm in a very different position than Prime Minister. I respect the Prime Minister. He has to sit in front of President Trump. It's easy for me to sit back and say that, and it's a lot more difficult when you're the front line guy that's negotiating with him. That's how I feel. We did it at a fraction of a cost, and my goodness, it got people's attention. Simple as that. So it was a great ad.
Just to follow up, Premier, since you're there, I mean, Prime Minister Carney kind of made a face when you said it was the greatest ad ever.
It was.
I'll maybe get him to weigh on that as well, but by not backing down, are you putting your own interests ahead of people in the sector?
In what sector? I believe you just can't roll. You can't. I'm in a different position. I'm not speaking for the Prime Minister. I'm speaking for the people of Ontario. We're getting hit the most out of any single province in this entire country. He's attacking our steel industry, attacking our automotive sector, attacking our manufacturing, our pharmaceutical, our life sciences. I'm not going to sit back and roll over and you know, not fight back to protect the people and their jobs of Ontario. It's as simple as that. That's my job, to protect the people of Ontario. I'm going to continue fighting to make sure we get a fair deal with the U.S. I can tell you one thing. I talked to God. I'm going down to sign a deal with the governor in New York tomorrow. I can tell you, I talk to governors almost every week, almost every single day, a senator or congressperson, Republican or Democrat. Even Republicans say they don't agree with the deal, but they're too scared, except 4 of them that crossed the floor to vote with the Democrats about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I'm gonna fight like I've never fought before to protect the communities in Ontario, protect their jobs, and protect the people. It's as simple as that.
Next question.
Did you want to weigh in on the facing?
Well, I think we should.
Next question.
Parce qu'il y a des autres personnes et pas.
Next question, Mackenzie.
Mackenzie Gray with Global News. I just want to follow up on what your answer to Mike was. You were not expecting that there's going to be any kind of sectoral agreement with the U.S. government, that the tariff deal will be done at the CUSMA table?
These processes are coming together now. It's possible. We're ready. We could, you know, if the U.S. wanted to sit down this weekend, we could sit down this weekend and hammer out a sectoral deal. I'm confident of that from our side. But there is now a process. The U.S. is doing consultations for what they call USMCA. We call CUSMA, and they'll finish those, and then that will roll into this review process. Let me make one general point. I'm going to hand back, which is part of fighting for the jobs here in Ontario, fighting for the jobs across Canada, is doing things like today's announcement. This is good under any circumstance because it's going to build big things faster, it's going to create more opportunities, it's going to create better futures. But it also puts us in a stronger position, in those negotiations. We have lots to do. We're ready to sit down on the weekend, negotiate any weekend, anytime, but we're also busy. We're busy building Ontario, we're busy building Canada, and we're going to build it faster.
Follow-up.
During the election, on multiple occasions, you said that supply management will never be on the table in negotiations with Donald Trump. Is that still your position? And Premier, on that point, are you concerned that saving supply management would mean that sectors like the auto sector would be more negatively impacted in trade negotiations?
C'est jamais la gestion offre, c'est jamais sur la table. Ça reste la même position. Not on the table. There's, you know, we have discussions. It's a negotiation. Each side has a set of issues. They put those issues on the table. They're measured in the dozens of issues. The U.S. has 54 issues with Mexico, for example. So when they're referenced, you have to put that in the context, and we'll always look for ways to benefit our workers, our families, as part of a broader agreement.
Like I'm unwavering. I support our farmers. I support supply management. And the ironic thing is, they're targeting our dairy. They didn't even hit their own quota. So if they can't even meet their own quota, there's no tariff, right? Or no charge. But I'm unwavering in support of our poultry farmers, our dairy farmers, and egg farmers. I know beef isn't part of it, but I support the beef folks. I love our farmers. They're the backbone of our country. And you talk about auto, the food and agricultural sector is much larger in Ontario than the automotive sector. But our automotive workers need to eat, so they tie in.
Thank you. We'll have time for one last question. Marco?
Hey, Marco Villiati, Politics. Mr. Prime Minister, are you comfortable substituting Ontario's environmental assessment process for projects that may land in a special economic zone under the legislation the Premier passed, even though that might mean proponents can bypass certain environmental protections, including in areas like the Ring of Fire?
Well, to be clear, we have the federal government's responsibilities in environmental protection. For example, in fish habitation, migratory birds, other areas, we retain these responsibilities. They're and we discharge these responsibilities, including through this agreement. So in areas where, and this is part of the issue. So let's take a big step back, and then I'll get more specific. Part of the issue that has bedeviled projects is you have the province of Ontario doing their job, sometimes in a sequence of decisions across. It can be labor standards, it can be Indigenous consultations, their own environmental responsibilities. The federal government over here doing our job, but again in sequence, nothing lined up, same information or very similar information being provided to different sets of people, and next thing you know, it's 8 or 10 years. So the first thing that this does is it gets everybody effectively in the same room, Ontario and the federal government. We know what our responsibilities are. We have one ask to the project proponent in terms of information. We have a common timeline. We leverage each other's resources. And then it drives to a single decision-making process at the end. But in terms of our responsibilities, whether it's on environment, our responsibilities for Indigenous consultations under Section 35 of the Constitution responsibilities, we discharge those, but in a much more effective and efficient way.
En français, sur le cercle de feu, Monsieur Carney.
En ce qui concerne le cercle de feu, il y a des... dans cet exemple, et c'est un exemple très important, il y a des enjeux pour le gouvernement fédéral. En ce qui concerne, par exemple, des oiseaux, des poissons, et des consultations à l'échelle de 35 de la Constitution avec les peuples autochtones. Okay? Mais, alors, on garde ses responsabilités, on respecte, comme gouvernement fédéral, nos engagements, nos responsabilités. Mais on crée en même temps un seul processus, une seule éventail de renseignements et un processus plus efficace avec une décision. Et dans ce contexte, une décision du gouvernement fédéral en ce qui concerne nos responsabilités et en même temps des décisions du gouvernement de l'Ontario pour celles responsabilités. Okay, ça marche.
Last follow-up to Marco.
And Mr. Prime Minister, earlier this month you said there's a window to get in a replacement to Kristen Hillman as ambassador to the U.S. before those CUSMA negotiations start. When can we expect to see an ambassador named officially? And Mr. Premier, maybe I get you to weigh into if there's any advice or guidance or names you suggested to the Prime Minister.
Well, I think I should hear the Premier's answer before answering your question.
Yeah, no, this falls under the Prime Minister's domain, and I'm confident that he's going to make a right decision. But this is a great announcement today, folks. This is two governments working collaboratively together. To answer your earlier question, the Ring of Fire, the environmental assessment is being done by the First Nations. Equity Partnership is by the First Nations. There's no one more anxious to get this done than Webequie, Arrowland, and Marten Falls. They're quite excited to move forward. I want to thank the Prime Minister for his collaboration and cooperation. But these are the things we have to move against President Trump and the world. We have to move faster, quicker, immediate, and you can't duplicate everything. We work together and led by the First Nations, which we have a phenomenal relationship with. And we're going to start moving forward. two things Americans want and the world wants. They want our critical minerals, better known as rare earth minerals down there, and they want our energy. That's the common theme down there. And we're leading the G7 in nuclear, small modular reactors, but we're leading the world in nuclear, clean, green, reliable energy. So we're going to build on that. And our critical minerals are going to get them out of the ground. We aren't going to rip and ship like a lot of times that's happened. We're going to make sure that we refine it here in Ontario and then have an opportunity to sell to the whole world. Those are two of our key strengths, negotiating tools that we have. But again, I want to thank the Prime Minister for his cooperation on this, and this is great for the entire country. So thank you, Prime Minister. Thanks for having us by today.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
One more question. Can you one more
We're going to
question?
move to the signing ceremony now. Thank you.
Is the Online News Act, is that up for repeal, Online Streaming Act? Ford, what do you make of Pierre Poilievre losing members of his caucus to Mark Carney? Would you like to comment on that?
How's your French Premier, Ford? You working on that at all?
Come see, come saw.
You don't want to comment on Poilievre's leadership right now? You're critical during the election.
I'm happy here with the Prime Minister. He's doing a great job. We're going to move this country forward, and we're going to move the province forward. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
This
Prime
is a great
Minister,
deal.
is it on the table repealing the Online News Act, Online Streaming Act, Online News Act? Is that on the table?
We're not going to see them? You're not going to hold the documents up?
Oh, yeah.
Are you considering?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Have you rethought your apology to the U.S.?
I'm not used to the reporters screaming at us while we're signing.
I know, this is
Ontario,
we're not in the Oval Office.
they were
This is-
much
there's
better
too many questions
behaved in
about
Ontario.
President Trump, and now you're
This is a
behaving.
democracy.
Okay, here you go. Here we go.
This is a
There you go.
democracy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a line, and you get
Thank
the
you.
line.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Is Online Streaming Act, Online News Act on the table during trade negotiations? We're seeing Trump upend deals across the world over tech regulation. Is this on the table?